fellas? Your boy Freelancer here today. So today, one of the things I want to talk about, or the main thing I want to talk about, is the Mick Jenkins tweet about does any rapper have 5 classic albums? And I want to give my 2 cents in this because I feel like it brings an interesting conversation, especially when you define what classic album is. Now, overall, short answer is no. Long answer is, my definition of a classic album is an album that is 75% A plus, without any, whack songs, but, songs that are still good, but not that amazing, but 75% of the album has to be an A plus, right? 3/4 of the album has to be an A plus, and it has to be very influential. A bunch of people have to have copied it, or at least emulate some of the production styles, or rapping techniques, quoted it, things like that, right? Now, I want to go over some artists with you. So, like, for example, my favorite rapper of all time, Nas. He doesn't have 5 classic albums. As much as I love the guy's music, I would say Illmatic is definitely a classic album. And I could argue it was written or Lost Tapes in terms of quality, especially Lost Tapes. And I could argue it was written in terms of influence. But I would still, overall, I can't sit here and be like, those are classic albums, because Lost Tapes just doesn't have the influence, even though if 75% of the album, in my opinion, is an A+, at least 75%, probably like 9 out of the 11 songs, 10 out of the 12 songs are great, you know what I mean? Damn near perfect songs, in my opinion. And it was written, I would argue, is influential, but it doesn't have it's just not that consistent. Like 6 out of the 8 songs, so I'd say about 60%, 50 to 60% is great, but not the whole but not enough for me to really be like, it's got too many filler songs on it, in my opinion. Now, one artist that got brought up a lot, and I gotta mention this, is Kanye West. I just don't think Kanye West has the catalog to really do it. I mean, I don't think he has a single album to me that I would call a classic album personally, but in terms of personal enjoyment. But in terms of influence, I could say he has 3, and that is College Dropout, definitely 808s and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Now, College Dropout is debatable because, someone can say, well, what is different between that album and like a Blueprint, right? Because Blueprint came out beforehand, Kanye West produced it, and that's more of a classic album, and it's a better album, in my opinion, than College Dropout. Now, let's say if I give you College Dropout, a lot of people say his first 5 albums. I think Graduation and Late Registration, I like Late Registration. I like College Dropout as well, but though I think Late Registration to me is just kind of like a continuation of College Dropout, and that's the thing. Like, you have to do something different, in my opinion, in order to have multiple classic albums. You can't just do the same thing 5 times and be like, oh yeah, he has 5 classic albums. That's just crazy. Otherwise, I could say Gangstar, right? And I love Gangstar, but Moment of Truth was like the peak Gangstar, and everything before that was kind of like a precursor to Moment of Truth, in my opinion. Now, other artists, Ghostface Killah and Ice Cube. I'll say Supreme Clientele is definitely classic. 36 Chambers is definitely classic. But that's about it, really, with Ghostface. You could argue Fish Scale. You could argue Iron Man. You could argue Woo Forever, right? But those albums, to me, like Iron Man quality for sure, but I just don't think it's as influential. I don't think it changed the game that much. It was just a really great album that RZA produced, right? I feel like the previous RZA works were more influential or more genre-defining. And with Wu-Tang Forever, again, it's kind of a combination of, I just don't think it's that genre-defining, and I don't think it's that consistent. Whereas even an album like All Eyes on Me, which is like a double disc album, I'll say that's because that is, 75% of the album is an A+ to me, and it is very genre-defining, right? Another point as well is Ice Cube, right? I'll say Straight Outta Compton, definitely a classic album in terms of influence. Personal enjoyment is close to a classic. I'm not too sure if I would call it classic personally in terms of personal enjoyment, but definitely in terms of like the larger, the scope of things, it's definitely a classic album in terms of influence and stuff like that. And his first 2 albums, I'll say classic albums for both personal enjoyment and influence on the genre. Outside of his second album, I mean, his 3rd and 4th albums were really good, of course, but they're not really classic because the 3rd and 4th albums, in my opinion, were kind of like extensions of the second one, right? Another artist I could talk about is maybe like Outkast. I'll say Outkast has 2, Aquemini and Atlanteans, are definitely classic albums. I mean, the first 4 albums, I'd highly recommend checking them out. I love them, of course. Watch my overview on Andre 3000. I love those albums, but I wouldn't really call all those albums like genre defining. Maybe and this is another thing as well. Stankonia has about 3 or 4 genre-defining songs in it, especially B.O.B., the singles, and maybe Humble Mumble and I don't know, Spaghetti Junction, right? But the rest of that album, I wouldn't call genre-defining because there's too many like songs that I'm just kind of okay on, or I think are good but not great, right? But influence on the genre, I mean, I'll say B.O.B. is a classic song, but I wouldn't say the rest of the album is a classic album. But it's still a great album, though. It's still a great album, and I still love it. And same thing with their debut. I feel like their debut was kind of a precursor to what they did later on. Similar with Gang Starr, right? A Tribe Called Quest was another name. I mean, A Tribe Called Quest, Low-End Theory, and Midnight Marauders, I'd say classic albums. And maybe Beats for Life, because it was one of the early albums to put Jay Dilla on the map, although Jay Dilla was gaining traction with Pharcyde Sophomore. So you could argue that, but I'd definitely say they have 2. I wouldn't say any Q-Tip solo stuff is really classic because it's not that influential and not that impactful, right? Amplified is a great album in my opinion. It's like an A- though, B+, A-. It isn't an A or an A+, right? So yeah, so that's just my thoughts on there. I just listed a handful of artists off the top of my head, really. Yeah, so let me know in the comment section who you think has 5 classic albums. I don't think Tupac has 5 classic albums as well. I think he's got All Eyes on Me Against the World, and maybe a handful of classic songs as well. Like Hail Mary, you know, Brenda Scott Baby, and a handful of other songs as well. That maybe like another dozen or so songs. Actually, a handful is too short, but another dozen songs are classics as well. So let me know in the comment section below who do you think are 5 classic albums. Like this video if you like this video, dislike it if you don't. Support your boy. See you in a bit. Peace.